Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Wednesday the 23rd of September, and joining me on this edition, our news editor Mark Hodgkinson.
We wouldn't be down here if it wasn't for you.
Assistant editor Steve Withers.
Up there, you're not dying, you're dead.
And audio reviewer Ed Selley.
I'm trying to kiss my ass goodbye.
Good for you. Hello and welcome back to the podcast, and as we always start with some things that we could win, why change it? And Ed, tell us what we can win.
Outstanding competitions at the moment. Beetlejuice on Blu-ray. That's open to all members and is open for another 7 days after the podcast goes live. And then open to active members, also closing 30th of September, so you have another 7 days, is The Last of the Mohicans, with some solid mental method acting from Daniel Day-Lewis. All fine films. No previous competition winners to report, but keep entering for those existing ones, and we'll no doubt mock your username when you win those ones.
So it was only last week that we were talking about the Apple TV and how we thought it was behind the times, and lo and behold, Amazon came along and announced their new Fire TV.
I don't think that was a coincidence, was it? That their announcement came just after, like 2 days later.
Yeah, but it's one way of getting over on Apple if you release a box that has far more features on it and is 4K.
Yeah, you can't argue with that.
Yeah, and to be fair, it's been coming for months, so we've kind of been watching the progress on the sort of the rumour sites.
Well, you maybe had. I'd never heard it.
I have. So it's been coming for months, so it's not a massive surprise.
Steve, were you surprised?
I wasn't surprised.
Yes, you are. Don't make it up.
I told you the day before it was going to happen.
My mum told me. But, and I'd seen the rumours the week before. But I was more surprised that Apple TV doesn't support UHD than that the Amazon Fire TV does, because clearly Amazon are pushing UHD on their service, and it's the format of the future. What surprised me a little bit was that it doesn't support HDR, which again they're pushing on their current service on some TVs. So that was a bit of a surprise. I thought I might want to do the whole package. But I mean, certainly from the point of view of its specifications and capabilities, it seems a significant improvement over what Apple announced the week before.
Yeah, it's a bit of
that right, Mark?
Yeah, for sure. The chip they're using is a bit of an unknown quantity. Actually, it's a MediaTek chip used in phones and tablets. But you got to think they've got a custom-made one, because the performance at the benchmarks isn't that amazing. We don't know what its capabilities are going to be exactly until we get one tested. So we don't know if it's going to support 24p properly. I really, really hope it does, because that's the one thing about the Fire TV was the jittery Netflix performance with 24p stuff that just I found unbearable after a while. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what it can actually do when it's out in the wild next week.
And how much is it going to be, Mark?
Same price as the other one, $79.99.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
Which is a fabulous price.
Yeah, that's a good price.
It's the difference between a company which places no stock on making margin on hardware, because it's not part of their model. Exactly. So it's another reason why it does the Apple TV is what represents as a challenge for Apple, because I think whilst they have lower margin aspirations on it, they do try to intend to make some money on the boxes, and then they're buying into other people's delivery systems to an extent, rather than sort of Amazon's content generation.
I've got to say, it's one of the Apple products that I always think, why? Because it just doesn't fit with all the other hardware that they make. It just seems like it's tagged on for some reason. It's just strange. I think
they came up with a good idea. Oh, hello. Hang on a minute.
No, I completely agree with you, Phil. And as I said last week, it's always, every generation of it has managed to be mysteriously disappointing in some way, shape, or form. Whatever innate promise has been there has always been hamstrung by something. So yeah, you would have thought after this many sort of stalled attempts, they might have knocked it on the head. They're normally fairly ruthless in this regard. They clearly see some worth in it that we're missing.
Yeah, I think that what's going to happen with Apple is they'll launch a Netflix sort of Prime type subscription service rather than their current model of rentals and digital downloads. I think it's the forebear. It's the forebear of that, which will
Apple
be
Movies or Apple.
Yeah, that will happen. Like they did with Spotify and copied that.
But once again, I mean, they're behind the curve on this, aren't they?
For sure, yeah, they are.
Why do you keep saying for sure? Have you spent the week with an Irishman or something?
Yeah.
We'll be watching too many Steve McLaren interviews.
Actually, I just did listen to a Steve McLaren interview. Funnily enough.
His idiocy is infectious.
Indeed.
Yeah, I mean, again, the Firebox just looks like a cracking little product. Now, there was questions on the forum, who's it for? Who's this product for? Which I found quite a strange question, because I can think of a number of reasons why you would buy a box like this. But what do you think, Steve? What who's this for?
Well, I mean, I'm assuming it's for people who want to deliver 4K to their TV, but maybe it doesn't have the apps in it to do it in the TV itself.
We can ignore the 4K though. Surely the 4K is not that relevant to everyone. It does plenty of other stuff besides.
Exactly, which is the point I wanted to. I think
we're looking at it through these very narrow.
That's exactly how we were looking at it, and it's exactly how people in the forum were looking at it. Quite narrow, but I mean, you got to look at, like you say, there's a new chip in there. We don't know what it's going to do. You don't know what the performance is going to be like, and it does lots of other things that the Fire TV does at the minute, which. It's not suddenly going to stop doing.
It was an attractive product when it was 1080p. It'll make it no less attractive that it's UHD capable, and the price is spot on. People
can't knock the price. That's true.
Nah, people won't think. You don't think twice about spending 80 quid these days.
Well, I mean, you just think if you've gone out and spent $8,000 on your OLED, but it looks like it won't have any smart TV on it. It's another 80 quid. You got all your smart features there.
And it'll be better updated than. A smart TV, typical smart TV. It'll be well supported through its.
That was another thing I wanted to bring up, because Amazon are actually taking their stuff off older smart TVs, so they're not renewing the licensing for Amazon Prime through.
Yeah, they made back-end changes to the streaming site, and it just doesn't work on some less capable devices.
Yeah,
it's almost inevitable.
But I mean, if you bought your TV 2 or 3 years ago and you bought it because it had smart TV and it had Amazon Prime, you're going to be pretty annoyed, even though they're offering you this new Firebox at a discount or a stick at a discount. You're still paying again to have Amazon on your TV. That's quite annoying, isn't it?
I don't know. These days we've been across a wide variety of bits of technology. We're so used to the limitless disappointment of either accepting software upgrades up to a point and then stopping, or you can continue to try and put software updates on it, but it causes it to run at the speed of mammal evolution. It's just one extra little drip in a lake of disappointment about the lifespan of modern day electronics. I think for every person that actually genuinely gets irate, most of the people are just going to shrug and accept it. That's the nature of the beast, I'm afraid.
It's certainly a lot easier to upgrade a Fire TV box once every couple of years for 80 quid than it is to find out that your TV's smart platform is now out of date. Because didn't YouTube also disappear off of older smart platforms as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Netflix on a couple.
Yeah,
I've had.
I mean, in terms of what it does, because I mean, obviously, I still use a Kuro in the lounge. That's not a smart TV, obviously. This is a good way of adding smart capability to television without,
It hasn't aged well either, has it, Steve? Let's be honest.
Well, in what sense?
Well, the design sense. I mean, you look at the bezel on a Kuro and then compare it to
one. And it weighs an absolute ton.
It's a big ad.
But in terms of the picture quality, obviously, it's still fantastic, and this is a good way of adding to it. But Martin, does it do all the services you would want? Is there anything missing?
Yeah, there are missing things.
What's missing?
It does Netflix, iPlayer, YouTube,
and Amazon.
Obviously, yeah.
What about Now TV?
Nope, no Now TV.
Okay.
No Wacky. If anyone's bothered about that, not sure they are. What else?
It's irrelevant these days. I only play 3-hour-long Peppa Pig videos on them. So
I don't think it has all 4, does it?
I don't know. Has that got Peppa Pig on it?
Yeah, but Prime has got Peppa Pig on it, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, I know.
And I mean, obviously, we're not talking about the new Peppa Pig episodes that came out in the last day or so, Ed, either.
Okay, well, that's I'm saving those until.
There was a particularly good Peppa Pig Cameron mashup on Beta, actually.
Yes.
B3TA, if you saw it.
I did.
Yeah.
That was very, very clever.
And I think while we're quickly breaching this subject, Cassette Boy.
Yeah, that was
nailed it.
He always does splendid. Now for me, I thought it was funny. His Cassette Boy versus The Apprentice was still his finest hour.
Yeah,
that's still the best one he's ever done.
But the fact that he turned that around in less than 24 hours was pretty genius, to be honest. Very well done. Anyway, back to smart TV.
So what I'm saying then, based upon what Mark's just told me, is it's not a one-stop shop the way that the Roku currently is. Is that right?
Well, no, because that Roku doesn't do Amazon.
Roku doesn't
there is no perfect solution.
You've got to have lots and lots of HDMI inputs and lots of little power supply sockets for these weedy little plastic boxes. as
Are there any single?
As I can testify.
Mark had a one of those. He had to do his own sort of very patient form of technical support. I got a Fire TV stick, and the last thing I want to do is use one of the sockets on the mains conditioner for the piddly little USB power supply. So I was just desperately trying to find something in the rack already which just shunts out enough USB power to power the stick locally. Did eventually do it, so that was quite good. That was handy, but Mr. Hodgkinson bore the brunt of that.
So while we're talking about these boxes, let's move it on to smart TVs. We've been talking about Android boxes for a while, Mark, and obviously you've been reviewing them and so on, and there are a couple of manufacturers who are taking the Android solution onto their smart TV platforms, namely Sony and Philips, which has caused them some delays this year in getting their TVs out there. And some people would say, certainly pointing the finger at Sony, that they've released the TVs too early and there's still lots of bugs in the system. Now, I've read the comments on your review of the smart TV system, and I've got to say, it seems that people are having far more issues than certainly I had with a full HD TV that I reviewed recently, where it crashed 2 or 3 times, but then when the firmware was updated, it seemed to be quite stable. You've only had a couple of, but it seems some people are having loads of issues with it.
Yeah, I think what maybe happens is over time it just gets clogged up, depending on how many apps they've downloaded, and what they've got running in the background. I think the big problem with these TVs is the amount of background processes that are running and the amount of so that's the system apps, but then the other apps you can open everything back out of it and it's still running in the background. So if people have got a lot of apps that open, then they're going to run out of RAM. Sluggishness will occur.
So basically what you're talking about is a memory bottleneck, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously the more things you've got open, the more memory it's taking up, and if you're streaming 4K video that's kept in a buffer somewhere, you're going to run out of RAM. They've only got 1.5 gig of RAM, which the typical boxes I review have generally got 2. The better ones, some of them 4, which is more than ample. But yeah, they could just do with beefing up the components probably for that smoother experience. I don't find it particularly buggy. I think some of the UI design choices were very poor. The Discover bar is a joke, but the home screen's nice enough, quite pretty. It's got a good range of apps. You can install Kodi on it if you want to run Kodi through it.
Well, see, this was the thing I was going to come to, because obviously when I approved your review and I'm thinking an 8, you've scored this at 8 out of 10. But then actually when I read the review, you do make some pretty good points, which is that everybody else's smart TV system is more or less locked down.
Yeah, it's got great freedom of control. I mean, I hooked it up with Air Mouse, keyboards, all sorts of stuff. An unlimited amount. The App Store that you get served to you through the TV is pretty limited, but you can sideload apps through USB or put a third-party app store on there and use that. And you could put the Amazon app store on there if you wanted to, any other, and have a play around. There's loads of games. It'll hook up with Bluetooth controllers, not just the DualShock 4. This is what they advertise, but you can use any Android-compatible Bluetooth controller. There's just loads of freedom there, which I really liked. It's not sandboxed and shut down like all the other ones, and I enjoyed the experience. Perhaps as time goes by and I downloaded more apps and used it, I used it fairly extensively, it would start running a bit slower, but generally I quite liked it.
And the TV that you tested it on was
8509.
Is that dual core or quad core?
It's dual core, I think.
Surprisingly, they're using dual core on their new TVs this year, when some people are using octa-core.
Yeah, I think they've skimped a bit. I do think they've skimped a bit, and they could have made the experience better for everyone with more resources available. Yeah, I think next year it'll be excellent. And also you've got to remember this is a fairly new version of Android TV, which is a fairly new operating system in itself. So Google will improve that. Sony will make their tweaks there, and I think it's going to be really, really good. And at this stage, I still think it's good. And
of course, Philips is the same. So you've just had a Philips TV with Android on board, Steve.
Yeah, and I must say, when I had the X94C, I didn't have any complete crashes. I didn't have to reboot anything, but it was definitely slow in places and there were a few glitches. But it was early days with that platform. With the Philips, I have to say, I had no problems at all. And in fact, I found myself enjoying Android TV more on that TV than I did on the Sony TV, and I think possibly because it's a bit less choice than it was on the Sony one, which I found to be excessive and confusing at times.
One thing I noticed,
obviously the layout's the same, but
I was going to say, when I was editing the videos, I had to double check that was the Philips, because the layout's identical.
Yeah, identical.
To what's on the Sony, even where the picture settings and stuff are. It's just exactly the same.
Yeah.
Well, you've got to remember that it's all built. Everything is an app now. So even the settings menu is an app. The EPG is an app. It's all, if you look into.
It does make getting into settings a real pain in the arse.
That is.
To go through the home button and then go down and select.
And then of course, if it's an app, there's no guarantee that it's going to work. And I think you've kind of hit that with the CMS on the Philips. It just didn't work, did it?
No, it didn't. It was very disappointing. And that's given that their TVs, certainly the ones I reviewed last year, were very good in that aspect. That was a disappointment. And maybe that's the reason. Because they changed the basic underlying architecture. But in terms of the Android TV platform, it was fine. Yeah, it was good. It was a bit slow at times. Again, dual core processors. But in terms of it didn't crash on me or anything like that. So maybe there's less running in the background than there is on the Sonys. I don't know, but certainly the platform, I found it more pleasurable to use this time round than I did when I had the Sony 94.
They both benefit from. I mean, most of these boxes on their home screen, they have what's called an all tasks killer or a system boost or something call it, but it basically kills all unnecessary apps, and they could do with one of those on the home screen. And it would be an admission of the fact that occasionally it will run sluggishly, but it could solve a lot of problems. Boost, performance boost or all tasks killer they get called.
Can't beat a boost gauge. Okay, so that's where we are in terms of smart TV and announcements that have been made. I'm expecting that we're going to get a new Roku box very soon, Mark. I mean, it's got to come along, hasn't it? Really?
Yeah, it's certain, and I think it specs wise, it's probably going to blow the Amazon out of the water. I'm expecting HDMI 2.0A, 4K at 60 frames per second.
Well, if it's got A, then it's going to do HDR, isn't it?
Yeah, and HDR. That's what I'm expecting. I've emailed the Roku guy, and he's completely ignoring me.
So what would be the source?
I would as well.
For Netflix, they're not on the Roku, would it, since it hasn't got Amazon?
Yeah.
Are there any other?
Well, they've got Amazon in the USA. So they've got Amazon. They've got everything in the US.
Boo.
Yeah, it's Amazon's the big lack. They've got everything else on the Roku. Everything else you'd want.
Right. So, like I say, we're talking about these boxes. We're talking about smart TV and all the rest of it. The big thing that keeps getting thrown back, even though the picture quality is improving every day on these systems, and like I said, I was quite blown away with the Amazon picture quality a couple of weeks ago when I was watching something. But the thing that always comes back is sound. It's one of the big pluses for Blu-ray because you're going to get the full HD soundtracks, which are not available streaming. Is it a big issue for you, Steve?
I think so. I mean, you could say, well, would you be able to tell? I know they can deliver things like Atmos through Dolby Digital Plus, as well as through Dolby True HD. So there is an option there available going forward. And I believe Netflix has already said they're going to do it, aren't they? So you will get improved sound quality over streaming, but you're never going to get the full lossless experience you're getting on Blu-ray. And I do think sometimes you can tell the difference. It depends on your system, I suppose, and how you got things set up. But I would miss that if it wasn't an option available to me. So for that reason alone, I think Blu-ray still has the advantage over any other delivery system.
But would it put you off streaming a movie and watching a movie via stream because you're only going to get...
completely put me off because it would depend on the context, I suppose. A lot of the streaming that I watch in the lounge and TV shows, that sort of stuff, and tend to just do it in stereo. So it's not really an issue. But if I'm streaming in the home cinema, then obviously I want a full surround experience. And if it's a film I'm just going to watch because I can't be bothered to buy it and I'm not that interested and just want to check it out, then I don't think it's a big a deal. If it was something I really love, then I'd rather have it in the best possible quality, both in terms of picture and sound.
So, Ed, do you think that this is what streaming has to do to kill off Blu-ray? It has to offer higher audio?
No, to kill off Blu-ray, it simply needs Blu-ray to continue faffing. We're not... People talking about whether Atmos is there or not, I hate to break it to you, but you're a tiny minority. Your voice is... people will pay a small amount of attention, but in the great scheme of things, I'm afraid it's not desperately important. There's also, I think faith is the wrong word because it doesn't require faith. You can, with reasonable confidence, see that as speeds across the UK improve, bandwidth improves, and so on and so forth, that streaming will be able to make up this deficit. Every single advantage of physical media is being slowly eaten away. So the only ones that remain are sentimentality. And I'm afraid that Blu-ray is too young and too fundamentally, just mass-produced to maintain any sense of sentimentality. So I'm afraid sound, it might matter to people on the forum. I won't lie. I do enjoy some of the more well thought out sonic mixes on Blu-rays, but if we it's not completely clear cut. I mean, if you've seen some of the comments doing the rounds, it would appear that the Age of Ultron Blu-ray mix, sonic mix, is bobbins. It may well have been deliberately pulled or hamstrung, so it works better on soundbars and other sort of speakers like that. But it certainly isn't the sort of.
Oh no, that's a very cynical view.
Well, it would be in an absolute sense, it would be a relatively sensible thing to do. It's what 2-channel audio had to suffer through for 15 or so years. So, with the best will in the world, not only is the advantages that Blu-ray have not going to be there forever, but there is some evidence in certain instances that Blu-ray isn't making full use of it anyway.
Mark, you'd be quite happy sitting streaming a film in 5.1 through Netflix or whatever.
5.1's more than enough for me. I run 2.1, or I use my headphones when I really want to listen loud. So yeah, it's no issue to me.
And do you think that you represent the general public, or do you think
I'm
Steve
more
does?
representative than Mr. Withers?
I would completely agree.
Yeah, I
sure.
think everybody is. Yeah.
Well, no, you've got to look around.
Blacked out room.
Speak to your friends if you've got any. I only know 2 people out of my group of friends who've got a 5.1 system, and that's out of 3.
3 friends. So 2/3 of your friends.
No, joking apart, probably about a 20th of my social group are interested in that sort of thing, and two channels is more than they need.
I mean,
spoil it. Give them mono.
You got to look at it. I mean, the number of people that probably get a sound bar completely outnumbers those who have a 5.1 system. But you're still talking about, even those that have sound bars, a very small section of the market, aren't you? Really? I mean, most people are going to listen through their TV speakers and be done with it, basically.
Based on no research at all, I would say 80% of people do it that way.
Oh, quote of the day. Well done. Ed, are we talking sense?
Yeah, I'm. Sorry, it's the nature of things, and streaming will make up the deficit. Every single, I don't mean to sort of overstate this, just to wind Withers up, but every single week that 4K Blu-ray is not in stores is another significant. It's all adding up to it, just never leaving the ground in any meaningful sense. Sorry. And I'd argue I'm actually in a very good mood today. I'm not being just pointlessly nihilist. It's just the nature of things. I've watched exactly the same thing happen as a teenager with SACD and DVD-A.
Yeah.
Completely pointless.
Yeah. And I've got to say, I can't remember where I read it now. I read it somewhere online. It was somebody representing one of these streaming companies. I can't even remember which one it was. It might have been Amazon. It might have been Netflix. I can't remember. But was asked the question about sound and said sound's not important. To the business model that they're building, they're going for the mass market. They could do things like Atmos and so on, but they're kind of thinking why at the minute.
Not worth the bandwidth.
I guess people, mass market wants convenience, and they want, that's what they're going to get, and they're not that bothered about picture quality and sound quality. And that's not to say that, as we've mentioned in previous podcasts, that these services can't deliver a very good picture, because they can. I'm always amazed at how good the picture is on both Amazon and Netflix, and now TV Fact these days, given the nature of my internet connection. So that's impressive in itself. But I just don't think the streaming is a solution to everything, because clearly I don't want to bang on about it, but for my particular case, I'm not going to be getting 4K streaming for a very long
but Steve,
time.
I think the next progression with these things is perhaps something like the Skybox or the BT box, where it has a terabyte or a couple of terabytes inside, and it downloads overnight for you. It
depends on the file size. If it's like 50 gig, it's not going to. That's not an overnight download. And while it's downloading, it's taking up bandwidth. Like I'm trying to do other things. So it's not an ideal solution. It's probably better than streaming. My problem with streaming is I don't mind streaming, TV shows and that sort of stuff. But if I want to own a film, if I like a film, I want to physically own it. Something that I can bequeath to the nation if I have to. But if you're streaming something, you don't own shit. And basically they can stop giving you that anytime. And already Netflix are basically not going to be doing as many movies as they used to, which used to be a great source for finding low budget or small independent films you hadn't seen. You can pick them up on Netflix for nothing. That's going to end. So they can take away stuff whenever they feel like it. You certainly don't have access to something. You certainly don't own it. It's bad enough with digital downloads. Do you own a digital download? Can you leave it to someone in your will? I don't know. I mean, I don't want a digital file. I want a physical thing in my hand. Ideally, a giant laserdisc-sized thing that I can really pour over and sniff the cellophane when you open it up. That kind of thing, like we used to do in the good old days.
Oh, it's all coming out now, isn't it? Well, it's interesting, actually, Steve. You touched on the stopgap measure. There is purchased download of items, and I have to say, obviously, it does create file size issues. But I have to. I mean, I've just bought a couple of albums online. Actually, not mentioning the usual suspects this time. I bought a couple on the Qobuz website, and I bought one direct off an artist's own website. And it's brilliant. As I say, I mean, yes, you can talk about physical ownership, but as a purpose of downloading, they automatically store to 2 locations. And at the end of the week, my scheduled backup to the offline backup will occur. I'm more confident in many ways of the survivability of those files than I am of me buying a disc, which will inevitably be found by my son and scratched to bollocks in about 3 minutes. So that may be the stopgap for you rural types. But I'm afraid not only are then proportionally not that much of you outside of the blocks of population that have high internet speed and climbing, unfortunately, then as a subset of the people without high-speed internet who are then also interested in very high-quality AV performance, well, you can probably hold a meeting in a coach. Yeah, it's not. It's unfortunately, you are not in itself a client base, however many discs you promise to buy.
And interesting that you put in the running order. Will pricing be important to Blu-rays, Ultra HD Blu-ray success, and why things? I think pricing's the least of the worries at the minute, to be honest.
Well, I only put it in because in the thread attached to the interview with the BDA, pricing seemed to get a lot of coverage because I'd said, what would I consider to be a reasonable price? And I said anything up to $29.99. And everyone was going like, I wouldn't pay more than $10. It's like, I'm going, where the hell are you buying your Blu-rays from for $10? Because I don't. Certainly, if you wait and buy them months later, you can get them cheaper. But if you buy on day of release, you're going to be paying at least 15 quid. I mean, that's pretty much the average of this, and maybe up to £20, depending on the title. And some 3D titles, like I noticed Mad Max Fury Road 3D is like 22 quid.
Well, they can get to bollocks on that.
Yeah, all right, but that's the day of release. Obviously, you'll get discounts after that. So I was thinking, between 15 and £20 certainly seems reasonable for Ultra HD 4K Blu-ray. Even higher, if you're treating it as a premium product, which I guess it is. Certainly a niche product, but I wouldn't mind paying 25 quid for it.
Yes, but you're not normal.
Actually, I spent £39 on vinyl.
Yeah, quite.
You're not normal.
3 albums, 30.
You're not normal either, Mark.
No,
I'm more normal. Yeah, well, I generally watch a movie once and that's it. So there's absolutely no point in me buying discs.
It's something I found myself doing with Blu-ray. I think it was after I went silly with DVD. I mean, Laserdisc before that. That was hampered because of the pricing of the stuff. So I only really bought what I could afford. DVD, I went silly with DVD. I must have had thousands of DVDs.
It was so cheap compared to Laserdisc.
Exactly, and I went kind of silly with the whole DVD. And I was getting stuff from Japan and all over the place because I wanted Black Hawk down in DTS and it was only available, I can't remember now, Portugal or something like that. And so you did silly things like importing stuff from all over the place and all the rest of it. But it's gotten to the stage now, I think, with the technology, with the fact that DTS is on everything. So, you're no longer searching for what's allegedly the best sound mix and so on, because everything seems to be done as it is and all the rest of it. I mean, you're getting to the point now where I only buy a Blu-ray if I know I'm going to watch it more than once. And that means films like Jaws or the Indiana Jones, Star Wars, those kind of movies. You know what I mean? only those kind of movies. Everything else, like Mark says, I'll watch it once and I think, well, I'm not going to buy the disc. I'll catch it some other way.
I do try and buy, as I say, I buy stuff in for having something relatively up to date for sound testing, but I'll choose fairly carefully what I end up buying. So this time I bought Fast and Furious 7. I own all the others, so I might as well continue down the path of
You watched it
idiocy.
yet?
No, I haven't got around to that yet.
At the end, you might find you've got something in your eye.
Okay, that's fine. Almost certainly it'll be shards of glass from my broken phone. But but before that was Fury. I haven't bought anything since then. It's just not often. And when I then go on Discogs late at night after some beers, and it's like, oh my God, there's about 900 albums I want to buy. Film always comes out second best under those circumstances.
I've got to say, if I'm walking through the big Tesco's or whatever, and they've got cheapy stuff on for like a tenner, and it's a half decent film, then I will pick it up. But other than that, it has to be something that really, I'm desperate to go and buy. And there's not many of them come along, to be honest.
I do think. Just thinking about this. They do need, if they're the full commercial assault that is the new Star Wars films, there has to be an opening for the Idiots box set, which includes it on, I don't know, let's say it has come to fruition, 4K Blu-ray, but then for, I don't know, ultra limited edition, 2,000 copies, nothing more, you can buy a special edition version of it on Laserdisc for the lols. And I bet you 2,000 of them, you'd have idiots bidding each other 6 ways from Sunday.
Yeah,
mate.
I'd be one of them.
I know. Not that you're an idiot, Phil. You'd just be suckered in.
Yes, I'd be suckered in. Totally.
But yeah, maybe this is where film companies are going wrong. It may be actually not about delivering the bleeding edge versions of it. People will just go, well, actually, I've got all the others on VHS. I bloody well want these ones on it as well. So maybe that's the way forward. I mean, if you've seen what's happened to cassette sales, I mean, vinyl can be driven by a possible qualitative element. People are only buying cassettes because, I don't know, they suddenly want to be 13 again.
Do they still make cassettes?
They do. And it's become a real
Brazil,
sort
isn't
of indie release thing. I'll send you a video after this. There's a bloke from a cassette in a factory in the US, the last cassette factory in the United States. They're now working 3 shifts and resurrecting machines which haven't worked for like 35 years. But if you remember, again, tapping into this nostalgia, the Guardians of the Galaxy mixtape.
Oh, yeah.
Went bananas. So we have to separate. There are people driven purely by quality, but your requirement for physical media is partly a traditional and a nostalgic one.
So I mean, we've got vinyl for audio, right? So I mean, what is the home cinema equivalent of vinyl then? I mean, there has to be one of the old formats that comes back, surely.
You're right, but I couldn't tell you which. I mean, let's face it. Unfortunately, Laserdisc has been dead for too long because it was
unbelievably rubbish as well when you compare it to today's standards.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing when people were talking about pricing. I was thinking, do you know how much I used to pay for a crappy VHS tape back in the day? You could easily drop 20 quid on a pan and scan VHS tape at about 200 lines of resolution, stereo sound if you're lucky. It's like, Jesus. And now we're on the edge. We're on the verge of having at home a disc format that can deliver, Ultra HD, DCI, 10-bit HDR. We're on the very verge of having at home what you basically get in the cinema, and no one cares apart from me, apparently.
Well, there's at least 20 or 30 other people that care. But I guess in case anyone's listening to this and they're feeling riled by how little I apparently care on this, I guess as the audio person, I've been through this and I'm coming out the other side. For me, the news is quite rosy. People who need the convenient options there, the quality options there. Artists are bypassing the crippling confines of record labels and selling material to customers direct and selling it in the formats the customers want and the quality the customers want in the manner that the customers want. What is happening with films at the moment, it need not be the end of the world. Where there is a demand, things change, delivery systems change and options change. So don't get too downcast by it. But the formulaic continuation of physical media. Physical media is going to have to adapt considerably to how it's going to do things, and I think you may end up with your best option being paid download. So not physical, but you do own it.
Do you think that kind of desire to own something physical is dying out? I mean,
Yeah.
No question, not a shadow of a doubt. And I don't. I have to count myself in there. I don't believe when I've bought a high-res download that I don't own it, Steve. As I say, I adhere to a relatively sensible backup policy. It's not going to be lost by a single hard drive crash. It's no more intangible. When you actually look at some of the production issues that affected CDs, DVDs, and Blu-rays, it's not any more intangible than optical disc.
Yeah, I mean, basically download it, burn it to a disc, and there you go. You got your physical format.
And then solved. I guess if whatever nostalgia I have for physical formats is continuously assuaged by the existence of one in my world. So I guess maybe I'm cheating, but I don't. When I buy an album off a high-res download or a lossless download, I don't think, I don't really own this because it's just a set.
But do you derive more pleasure from buying a vinyl LP and having that physical disc in your hand? Is it just purely about?
For me, it's always been about the music, and there are many times when I look at the price of an album being released on vinyl, I think it's just no. If I can have 3 great albums for the price of that one, I'll go for the download method every time. I mean, not least because it's not like my digital front ends are, in any way sort of flaky. It still sounds sensational. So I choose my vinyl purchases carefully. I'm more likely to buy something that was released on vinyl in the first place because the chances are pricing isn't going to be too harsh, and that's the format that it was supposed to be in, so that more often than not it sounds the least messed about with.
So we failed to stick to the running order yet again.
But I think we've been hot on topic.
Oh yeah, totally. It's just Steve's hard work's gone to waste because he's spent a lot of time.
He spent all of 5 minutes typing.
Well, maybe 2.5 minutes. If you think of it.
I don't know. He's quite slow at time.
Yeah, it's true.
Anyway, that's hardware for this week. We'll be back in a sec with movie news. Steve, what's at the cinema?
I went to go and see Everest, which we discussed last week. I believe Ed's wife saw it at a preview screening, and I have to say her 3-word review wasn't far off the mark. But we are. It's
available for sale for anyone looking to update their movie posters in the cinema if they want. Kirsty's quite happy to be attributed to that as well. I think it's the most succinct review I've heard for some time.
Yes, it is quite bleak at the end. I'm not going to lie. However, I do actually applaud the filmmakers for not bottling it, and they do stick to the facts and what really happened, and they don't try and turn it into a Hollywood ending or make it happier. It isn't. It's grim, really, really grim at the end. Even like the guy that survives probably wishes he hadn't. So it's not an easy watch, but I think it's bloody well made.
I guess the problem with these films, Steve, it's a bit like the Titanic, isn't it? You all kind of know the ending, so what really has to work is what's in between.
Yeah, I mean, you may not know. You may not know the ending. I mean, I had time to research it prior to seeing the film, so I did know the truth of it. But you may go into it completely cold, and then you probably would find it an incredibly dark and bleak experience because you know what to expect at the end, and you'd probably be assuming, since it's a film, a Hollywood film, that's people are going to be okay, and they're not. But it's very well made, and they do spend a long time allowing you to get to know the characters, which is important because you do sort of care about them more towards the end. And I think that's a film. A lot of films make the mistake of not investing time in the characters to the point where you care about them. Because if you don't care about somebody, then it just becomes a meaningless experience. But if you care about them,
the classic example for that was Black Hawk Down. Everyone had exactly the same haircut, looked exactly the same, and died like flies. It's like
you could tell who was who.
Ow.
You didn't care about them. In this case, it has one minor problem, which is, I guess, unavoidable. When they're up on the mountain, they're all wearing, parkas and goggles and masks, so you can't really tell who's who a lot of the time. But obviously, they do find ways of making sure you do know who is who and who's in trouble and who's in less trouble. But it's very well made. Certainly, I mean, it was shot both in the Himalayas and also in the Alps, I believe. It looks very realistic. You really get a feel for how hard it is to climb mountains of that size. Once you go above a certain limit of the vertical limit, your body is quite literally dying from that point on.
The thing I found really surprising, I watched a documentary on it recently, because obviously they had the earthquake there where there's lots of people killed on the mountain recently. And one of the things I didn't realise was that even base camp, you have people dying of sickness there.
Pulmonary edema.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's even base camp's really high. I mean, I've had some friends who've actually made the trek up to base camp, and it is bloody high. And if you've ever been at altitude, it's even nothing like that high, but even a bit of altitude, when you suddenly realise just how much less oxygen there is in the air, it is debilitating. And so you understand how incredibly hard it is to get to the top of these mountains and back down again alive. And also the fact that you have to be quite ruthless. But if someone drops down, you haven't got the energy to carry them. They're dead. You just leave them. And there's a scene where they go past frozen bodies, that have been there for however long. I mean, I think they found Mallory's body not so long ago, didn't they?
Yeah.
Almost perfectly preserved. It doesn't. It really stays true to the harsh realities of mountain climbing, and also, it does raise the issue of these companies that take amateur climbers up Everest. To the point where there's the very short window of opportunity, like we talked about last week, where you've got people literally queuing up to climb the mountain, and they're above the point where their bodies are already dying and they're getting cold and they're waiting their turn. You think it's a disaster waiting to happen here. So when this storm comes in, and then these guys are up on this mountain, and they're kind of, one of the guys on the tour is a journalist, and they want to get into the top because they want to write a good story about their company. So they do things, I think, they take risks they wouldn't normally have taken. And they make some mistakes, and those mistakes are disastrous for them. The sound mix was fantastic. When some of the storms hit and things like that, really rumbling around the room, I was thinking, this would be a great disc. And it looks gorgeous, except at the cinema, it was out of focus, which really pissed me off. And when they do the zoom and shift and they refocus it didn't refocus properly on when it zoomed out to a widescreen. And I'm thinking, God, I can do this at home. How can they not do it in a professional cinema properly? That was really annoying. It was out of focus because you think about this is a lovely shot, but it's just a little bit out of focus the whole time. But in terms of the film itself, I thought it was entertaining may not be the right word, but it's certainly well made, and it gives you a real feeling of what it's like to climb one of these really high mountains where, the effort and struggle involved in doing it and why it's so bloody dangerous. The cast is good. They do the sensible thing of having some quite well-known people in smaller roles so that you remember them. Because when you've got a large ensemble cast, if you don't know who they are, then you can quickly forget who a character is. Having Sam Worthington play a small character means you at least remember who he is. Because, Sam Worthington and Jake Gyllenhaal turning up and this kind of stuff. So that's good. I've got to say that both Emily Watson and Keira Knightley do fantastic Kiwi accents, spot on, which is good to see because most of the characters in it are, certainly the people running the company are actually from New Zealand. And having known quite a few Kiwis, they do spot on accents. And it's a very well made film. It's, you could say, would it have not been better to do it as a documentary? But it seems even handed. It really puts you up there on that mountainside. I'm not going to say I enjoyed it, but I certainly found it a rewarding experience.
I think there already is a documentary, Steve. I'm sure I've seen it on Discovery or something like that. Where
I'm sure there's a documentary about it. And obviously, as you mentioned last week, Phil, the Everest, the IMAX team that was shooting the documentary Everest were there when that happened, and in fact were involved in some of the rescue operations. And they mentioned briefly at the beginning of the film and say, they've got a team from so and so, and there's the IMAX team over there, that sort of stuff. So. But I think in terms of there aren't that many mountain climbing movies, so it's certainly well made and puts you really. I mean, it's about as close as I want to get to being up Everest, really, because it looked bloody dangerous and really hard work.
Well, there's no way I could do it because you have to go across the what do you call it, where there's a gap in the ice.
Yeah, they got the ladders.
And you got the ladders, and you've got to walk across. There's no way I could do that. No way.
It was. It's available in both 2D and 3D at the cinema. It wasn't shot with 3D cameras, unfortunately. But I saw it in 2D. But I just imagine that if the conversion is done well, it would make it. It could be quite a vertigo-inducing experience in 3D.
Of course, if any hipster mountain climbers are reading this, 2,700 people have now made it up Everest.
Almost all of them beards, I should think.
Well, I imagine so. But obviously we quoted from the film Vertical Limit at the start and indeed the end of this. Only 302 super cool people have made it up to the top of that, and 80 people are very cool indeed because they've died doing it. So
yeah, it's supposed to be a lot harder than Everest.
Yeah, it's apparent. But again, if we're going true obscure, the one you want to get your ass up is Annapurna, which is also in the Himalayas, because only 191 people have climbed that, and 61 people have died trying. So that's a 32% fatality rate, which is cool. Well, not cool, but it's quite. That's the one to shoot for. None of this commercialized, Disney mountain stuff.
Worth going to see, I think. Certainly it'd make a good big screen experience.
I'll wait and stream it.
I'm waiting for someone to really jump the shark. Someone needs to watch it at base camp once a day, just to cheer themselves up before they go up there. The same reason that they should show a live on more in-flight movies.
You may notice that kind of film never gets shown on in-flight movies.
Yeah, United 93 is not a big one either.
Yeah. I don't think I'd buy it on Blu-ray though, Phil, because I don't think Everest really makes a good repeat experience.
Is everyone going to survive this time? No.
Is it going to be as bleak as the last time? Yep.
Anyway, if any of us miraculously decided to go to the cinema this week, Steve, what could you see?
There's not that many films opening. There's only really one major film, and I saw the trailer for it, and I thought, I don't know about that. It was Anthony Hopkins and Colin Farrell in a film called Solace, where Hopkins plays a psychic who helps the police in investigations, and which lost me immediately because I don't believe in any of that Kabbalism. And I think Colin Farrell is basically a killer who's also a psychic, and he's deliberately, can see one step ahead of what the cops are going to do, and he's leaving them clues and taunting them. So if you like that kind of thing, it might be interesting. I don't really like psychics and that sort of stuff, so it put me off immediately.
You would have liked the documentary. It was on BBC Four the other night. Then
with
the great
James
Randy.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I've seen it before. Really good. I love
really
the
good.
debunking.
Yeah.
The stuff he did with the guy with the earpiece is superb.
Yeah, and the thing he did with Uri Geller as well when he was on that talk show, that was brilliant as well.
Yeah, I love that kind of thing because I really hate those charlatans. Anyway, that's what's opening this week. So, Sharina actually seems like she's quite keen to go and see it, so fair enough to go and review it. But I just felt like Anthony Hopkins obviously is a paycheck gig, and Colin Farrell can't get much work these days, so take him what he can get.
Blu-rays, if we decide that we're still going to buy them, what can we buy?
You can probably watch them on some streaming services too. We've got Big Game, which is the Finnish-US co-production with Samuel L. Jackson, rather unbelievably playing the US president, who an Air Force One gets shot down over.
Can I say, what do you mean rather unbelievable? We are in. There's an outside chance that Donald Trump will become the United States president. Samuel L. Jackson, by comparison, is it's not like it hasn't been held by a former actor before, is it?
No, true.
In many ways, I'd rather have Samuel L. Jackson as the president of the United States than Donald Trump. Sorry.
Yes, given the option of Donald Trump or Samuel L. Jackson, I'll take the latter. But he's the president, gets shot down over Finland, and basically teams up with a young kid in the forest and the wilds of Finland to keep him alive and keep him away from the terrorists who are after him and want to kill him.
Wow, that sounds exciting.
Kaz seemed to quite like it, although Kaz just have sometimes has slightly iffy taste when it comes to action film.
Yeah, just a bit.
And the other film opening, Blu-ray coming out this week rather, is Pitch Perfect 2, which is obviously a sequel to Pitch Perfect, about an a cappella girl group, which has been very successful and was directed by Elizabeth Banks, which I didn't realise until I was looking it up earlier. But it's been a big hit for Universal, who've had a fantastic year. Universal are absolutely coining it in this year between Jurassic World, Fast and Furious 7, Minions, Pitch Perfect 2, Straight Outta Compton, and 50 Shades of Grey. They've made more money this year than any studio in history. At least until Star Wars opens in Christmas, anyway.
Do you think that they're all like Scrooge McDuck? They've got big piles of coins, although obviously I'm fully aware that the physics of diving into a big pile of coins just involves a lot of broken bones. Yeah. Or maybe they just got lots of mattresses with $100 bills all over them so they can just like make snowman shapes in them.
But anyway, they have pulled in, what was that, 1, 2, 3, something like $4.5–5 billion so far this year.
Magic.
Pretty good year for Universal. And not a bad year so far for Disney. And I suspect it's going to get better because I was looking at the cinema releases going into November, December, planning out reviews. And after the 4th of December, there are no major films apart from Star Wars. Like, everyone's just gone, it. We're not going anywhere near that. Absolutely no way we're going near that. Nothing the 2 weeks before it you would class as a big release, and nothing the 2 weeks after it, Christmas either. It's just that this on all yours. So the question now becomes, can it beat Avatar?
Yeah,
I
think,
would say so.
Yeah, I was.
If Jurassic World can make 1.6 billion, and like who'd thought that coming? You got to think it's got to be up to at least a cheeky.
If it's in any way any cop at all, yeah. And also, let's face it, it'll have a reasonably long run as well, I imagine.
Yeah,
it's going to have no competition, that's for certain.
Yeah.
If I'm going to the cinema to see something, it's going to be a hit.
Or it is going to make a lot of money.
Get me out of the house.
Did you know that there's an Italian climber with the decidedly un-Italian name of Reinhold Messner, who looks like George Lucas, but he's climbed all of the peaks in the world over 8,000 metres, and he's done them all without oxygen.
That's well hard.
That's pretty hard, but no, I'm going to send you the link because he does genuinely look like George Lucas, which I think you'll find quite amusing.
Is that George Lucas when he was younger, or George Lucas?
No, George Lucas
with
now.
A big fat tummy and a big neck.
Yeah, wait a
And
second.
a check shirt, a beard, and a quiff.
No, it would be pretty good if he did it in a checked shirt.
He's not wearing a checked shirt. I got to disappoint you there.
Oh yeah, he does look a lot like George Lucas, isn't he? That's hardcore.
He's the man that you need to blow up party balloons.
So just to wrap up on the podcast, we're going to go back to streaming services because the BBC are planning a Netflix-style service in the US. And I think this is a long time coming, Mark, because as far as I'm aware, it's quite easy to get iPlayer abroad where people don't pay for it.
Extremely easy. Yeah, you know, like we use DNS services to access Netflix in other territories, and people do that with the iPlayer.
Well, you might do that. I couldn't have possibly admit to
Bloody
doing
well
that.
I do it.
Yeah, I mean, we can freely admit that. We're not breaking any laws. And the people accessing iPlayer from other territories aren't breaking any laws. They've got to shore that up before they go launching with any Netflix-type service. If people can freely get at what they want anyway, then what's the point? And they've tried it before, haven't they?
They've been running this national iPlayer service for 4
complete
years, and no one's been interested.
No one's interested. I don't think they've got the breadth of content required to run this.
Is that because they've sold a lot of their content to other people like Netflix?
Well, that's it. They've already, yeah, and they've already said that this won't affect their licensing deals with other providers. So you'll be able to get it elsewhere.
There's a huge mine of historical content.
There's a load of stuff. I admit there is a lot of good stuff, documentaries and all that kind of stuff. But have the BBC got the breadth of content? Has it got enough big drama, big hitters? Have they got the movies? You know, have they got enough for a standalone service?
No, but you see, thinking about this for online services, for binge watching, they've got any number of, useful 12-episode things.
Providing they haven't lost it.
There is a huge, I'm just thinking back from sort of the mid-70s onwards, or even earlier in some cases. There's stuff where, for a Netflix-style fee, you'll sit and watch one episode. You think, do you know what? Let's see how that ends. I mean, one of the classic ones, and I'm hoping to God it's BBC. I might have to check. But there was a Richard Bryars comedy, If You See God Tell Him, and I haven't watched that for years. And if I had the option to watch that again, I'd be in like Flynn on that.
You're English. Who else?
Well, I know I won't actually get to see it.
Yeah, but I mean, there's loads of stuff. I'm just thinking about it. I mean, all the Horizons, I'd sit and watch through them because I love Horizon. I think that's brilliant.
You can do that now.
BBC 4, that's all they ever bloody have on it.
Yeah, but you can only do certain bits. I mean, Horizon goes back, is it 40 years?
Yeah.
I mean, so sometimes you get stuff from the archives which is really interesting to watch. So like things that were made in the late 70s, talking about social housing and that kind of thing. Now, it sounds dull, but actually, if you've got any interest in history and stuff, it's really fascinating to watch.
Tell you what, I'd love to watch old episodes of Tomorrow's World.
Yeah, totally.
That'd be brilliant, wouldn't it?
Yeah, really good. So
have they still got all this stuff?
Well, yeah, I don't know, but if they have, that would be fantastic. Instead of it being iPlayer, which is obviously you can watch stuff you've missed. So it's back a month, isn't it? Stuff for the last month. you've missed, I can watch that. But having a streaming service or subscription service where you can go in and watch anything the BBC have made in the last 60 odd years, that would be a genuine resource that I think I certainly like Ed. I mean, I can think of shows like, remember there's a show back in the 80s called Bird of Prey with Richard Griffiths. So I remember thinking it was really good when I saw it back then, and I would like to see it again.
I'll tell you one thing I'd love to see, and I know actually the reason why it's never been broadcast again is because there's massive arguments over the people that actually wrote it and who gets money and whose credit it is. But Monkey Dust, I mean, that was magnificent, and I'd love that to come. I'd love that to be shown.
It was BBC film,
BBC
Coast
Play.
to Coast. No, I'm saying BBC did. Well, I can't remember how you define film or TV movie or play. Because obviously BBC have BBC Films that actually do produce cinema content, but they also make, I guess, what you would class as TV movies for broadcast on the BBC, or even like hour and a half long dramas is effectively a movie. They did one in the late 80s called Coast to Coast with Lenny Henry and John Shea, and it's been broadcast. I used to have it on VHS tape, and I watched it over and over again until basically the tape wore out. It's never ever been released because it's got one of the best Motown soundtracks you'll ever hear. It's got 20 or 25 classic Motown tracks and some quite obscure stuff too, which I spent years tracking down after I'd seen it. And because of the copyright issues with that, it's never been released on DVD or anything like that, or even repeated. Maybe that wouldn't get shown again, but that kind of stuff I would love to see again. Absolutely love to.
And there's a lot of good food stuff as well, which doesn't really date. I mean, don't get me wrong, some of the Keith Floyd stuff is quite alcohol heavy when you view it back in the 21st century.
Very enjoyable viewing, though.
but nonetheless, I think it's workable for a solid enough fee. And if this is the BBC starting to make use of material it's got to assist its own funding and existence, it's always going to get a support from me. This is what it should be doing.
I do agree on that, and I think that they should monetize their content in some way internationally. But I just don't think there's enough there for a Netflix style service and what people want, particularly internationally.
Well, maybe internationally, but the more we talk about this, I'm thinking I want this service in the UK. I want to be able to go through all the archive stuff and watch 6 seasons of Jim Will Fix It.
that won't be making it, will it?
They should make the BBC put everything up, including all the embarrassing stuff.
Animal Hospital.
It looked all right in the 60s. But
they've lost
some of the stuff. Like Black and White Minstrel Show, I want that back on. There's some really iffy stuff.
I don't know if you've been watching the series that's been running on Channel 4, and they've been doing each decade, and they did the 60s last week. My God, some of the stuff how they got away with it, how it was ever thought to be normal.
Well, the funny bit was when the comedy show where the guy gets dragged through it was a bookcase, and they obviously stored the bookcase to break apart. And then when I got to lunch, someone had come around and glued it all back together again. So they dragged this guy through it, and it knocks him out stone cold. But because it's a live broadcast, the two actors keep going. And
they threw him out the window.
And throw him out the window. It's absolutely hysterical.
But you think, geez, how
Drake, wasn't he? It was Charlie Drake, they got knocked unconscious.
It was quite disappointing. I just found, obviously, I was just immediately thinking of Love Thy Neighbour, but that's ITV, not BBC.
Yeah, that was like...
watching that, it's impossible not to just clench up and try and hide behind the sofa. It's just awful.
They were having a go at John Lennon, weren't they, from that live broadcast where he's doing like a Jerry Deacon impression, a bit before that time, I suppose. But I was thinking, yes, obviously we're more enlightened now. Phil, I remember doing that when I was a kid at school.
Yeah.
You just didn't you, basically? In fact, anyone of a certain generation, including me, Mark, and probably you, Phil, if I say the words Jerry Deacon, I assume you immediately start doing the face and the voice because it's just a Pavlovian response.
I've grown out of it now, Steve, to be honest.
No, I
2012 was the best year.
You would do it.
In many ways, if this BBC thing, dragging it tortuously back on topic, if this BBC thing genuinely is a pretty much sort of restricted access to as much of their archives which has survived them randomly taping over it or storing it underwater or whatever the various things they've done to stuff that was actually quite good, I think it'll work. And as I say, I personally think that this is amongst the things that the BBC needs to do to continue to essentially reconcile its ambitions with the nature of how we fund media in the 21st century. I think that's all pretty logical. And my only hope is that if it's well sorted and it proves to be successful abroad, whether it can be looked at as part of the license, as something we can access as part of the license fee in the UK, that would also be quite cool.
That is supposed to be happening, isn't it? The BBC iPlayer won't exist in a few years. It will just be the bbc.co.uk website, and we'll have access to all this stuff that they're going to do internationally.
Well, all the stuff
apparently
destroyed.
Anyway.
I mean, Old Grey Whistle Stop is the classic example, isn't it? I mean, some of the finest live, finest live performances of the era, and broadly speaking, erased. Nice.
They erased quite large chunks of early Doctor Who as well, didn't they? Certainly.
Yeah, well, that's no great loss.
Yeah,
but it is. It's a big seller for them.
Yeah,
but they actually fortune for those.
Did they not find them though recently?
They found a large collect in Nigeria again.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, a lot of it's missing. Get over it, Who fans.
Is he not back this weekend?
Yeah, it was last Saturday.
Was it last Saturday? Was it? It shows how much I pay attention. Was it any good?
It was good in some respects. It was a classic Stephen Moffat. It was just full of it, knowing, really smug, not as clever as it thinks it is. Rattles along at a fast pace. You stop thinking for a second, think doesn't make any sense, and what the hell's going on? And you need to do. And obviously, if you know a bit about Who's history, maybe you get some kicks out of it. I found it slightly disappointing.
A self-congratulatory circle jerk was how a friend of mine described us on Twitter.
That would be a pretty good description of that. Stephen Moffat is always like that,
Yeah.
Characters who you think are dead turn up and they go like, short story, short answer, not dead, which is a gag he's already used in Sherlock anyway. And I just remember thinking, what?
Okay.
Anyway, the numbers were much lower than the first episode last year with Peter Capaldi. Had
With
like 4 million more viewers or something like that, so they plummeted.
Yeah, but assuming that wasn't the big shock over the weekend. I think it was Downton Abbey had the lowest figures it's ever had on a launch for its final season.
Not least because my wife watched it on catch up. I ignored it studiously.
I have no interest in it whatsoever. But it was seemingly it was big news on Sunday, and sadly. Or gladly. That is the AVForums podcast for this week. My thanks to Steve Withers.
100,000 sperm, and you were the fastest.
Mark Hodgkinson.
Don't mind her, she's French-Canadian.
And Ed Selley.
I reckon we should wait until they chuck in a ski lift.
Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark avforums.com for latest reviews, news and video, and you can also leave us a rating on iTunes. If you give us 5 stars, we'll read your name out on the podcast.
We can't be good. Just bribe you.
Loads against that.
Hey, it's got to be worth that bribe. I'm Phil. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you again next Wednesday.